Unreported World, Shay Rhodes reveals how Trinidad has become one of the most dangerous countries in the Caribbean. While 500,000 tourists soak up the carnival atmosphere every year, a state of emergency has been declared to tackle the gang violence that sees a murder every 17 hours on average. Shay went to the capital port of Spain in September amid wide-scale arrests and a nighttime curfew.
Half a million tourists flock to Trinidad and Tobago every year to soak up the carnival atmosphere. But after dark in the capital port of Spain, the atmosphere changes.
Come to an area called St. James. This is a really popular going out spot. There are bars and restaurants and nightclubs on both sides of the road. But even though it's only about midnight and usually this whole area would be packed at this time, at the moment it's completely dead. It's a really spooky feeling.
On the stroke of 11 p.m, this bustling city becomes a ghost town because of a strict curfew.
Evening. We have some curfew passes.
I could only go out because as a journalist I had a special curfew pass. Port of Spain has been like this since August, when the government declared a state of emergency.
There's an army patrol here, parked up right in the middle of the road.
The reason? A rash of violent killings that has turned a tourist destination into the murder capital of the Caribbean. On average, someone is killed here every 17 hours. The majority of the victims are shot dead in just a few ramshackle neighbourhoods in East Port of Spain.
We've just come down the road and seen a huge police operation. Not sure exactly what's going on. I went and asked the police, but they're unwilling to say anything.
They took a man from a house. Under the emergency powers, the police can enter any property without a warrant and arrest anyone they choose. We followed the convoy to a patch of wasteland in Laventil, a notoriously violent area. The police began a painstaking search.
It seems the police may have found something in this field. They've been searching it for about half an hour now. Wow. Whoa.
Inspector Sahara Singh showed us the find, an automatic pistol.
I've never seen anything like this before.
One reason for the shocking murder rate is the easy availability of illegal guns. Around 3/4 of all murders involve a firearm.
What kind of gun is this?
We have to examine it good and tell you what it is.
Yeah. Have you seen anything like this before?
No, first time.
Really? Okay. And then you've got more operations happening tonight?
Yeah, we continue.
Okay.
Using their emergency powers, Inspector Singh's men forced their way into house after house. More than 4,000 people have been rounded up in just 2 months since the start of the state of emergency. I asked the inspector why.
Firearm-related offences, narcotics, robberies, shooting, murders.
Right. Back at Besson Street Police Station. We've been out with the police for 4 hours now. They've found one gun and arrested these 5 men and brought them back to the station. All of them are wanted on outstanding warrants.
This year, 266 people had already died by the time the state of emergency was called. The police crackdown cut the murder rate in half, yet the killings continue.
We've just arrived at the scene of this double shooting. I've got my curfew pass in my hand, and I see they're loading one of the bodies into the back of the car here.
Micaiah Davies is the detective in charge of this investigation.
How many homicides have you had to deal with since the start of the state of emergency?
In our region? On the train, but we lost 5.
Really? One of the victims was shot with a shotgun in the face. The other one was shot 4 times with what appears to be a handgun. And what I can see is that, judging by the relationships between the funeral directors, the forensics and the police, and the local journalists that came to cover it, this is clearly a very common occurrence here in Trinidad.
I wanted to find out why this once peaceful island had been so infected with violence. I went back to an area close to where we'd been with the police. The neighbourhood of St Barb's has been the scene of scores of murders.
So, Bumbe, do you think people are going to want to talk to me around here?
No.
Why not?
Come on, I'll show you these places.
Sherland Garvin, better known as Bumbe, is now a youth worker, but he once belonged to a gang that terrorised this area. He says that since the mid-2000s, gang culture has spiralled out of control.
In these places, I'm all over here going faster than a plate of food. So you have a culture, the ghettos have a culture that the man who has the most play is the man with the biggest gun.
He explained that the gangs fight over status and territory.
Around here, how long on average do people survive on
So
the
you
street?
have youngsters, if you ain't that smart, I give you something. If you're really smart.
He introduced me to his friend Engin, who recently completed a 16-year sentence for robbery and shooting.
You all right?
Engin escorted us into the maze of houses and shacks called Block 22.
Oh, okay.
A man called Nico Williams was murdered on this street just 2 months before. Engin spotted Nico's girlfriend, Patrice.
Why do you think your boyfriend was shot?
Somebody didn't like him or find he should go. Number of reasons, but it was senseless.
Why do you think it's happening? Why is there so much violence?
It's for fame, it's for glory, it's for name call, it's to be in that little short space of time, because they would kill today and they would die tomorrow. But between today and tomorrow, the little short space of glory they could get from it, the easiest thing to do is get a gun. The easiest thing to do is get a gun.
Just down the hill, I'd arranged to meet Susan Weeks.
How are you?
2 of her sons had just been arrested under the emergency laws, suspected of being gang members.
Police came, knocked the door. They say, have any big sons? I said 2. And they say, wake them up. We carried them down to the station.
Okay.
Because they was charged for gang related.
Right. Show me, are these photos of the boys over here?
This is one of the boys, the big one.
Okay.
Kadeen Weeks.
Uh-huh.
Susan was still struggling to come to terms with their arrest, and with the violence right on her doorstep.
Sometimes I say, Lord, why Lord gives me boys? Because I find like, boys is trouble. And in this time here, where they start killing, mostly boys giving headache. So when your kids reach 19, 18, 17, going on anywhere that age, you start to get a fright in your life. Because we all are parents, and we could never know everything our kids doing.
She told me she doubted the state of emergency would end the violence.
The shooting and thing come a kind of overbearing too, because every minute here and pow, 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 and then you hear 2 there, there's no 1 there, there's no 1 gone, so that is very hard.
Was that literally every day?
Yeah, every night, right? Then you have your 2 sons, and suddenly one day they will be outside and somebody will kill them too.
Since the state of emergency began, many families in this neighbourhood have had their sons arrested. We met Susan's friend Ingrid. Her son Andy had been picked up a month ago. She hadn't seen him since.
But my next son asked me, Ma, you ain't missing Andy? I say, every day I'm missing your brother, every day. Because get up in the morning, you ain't seen him in the night time when
Like Susan, Ingrid was bewildered that guns and gangs had engulfed her once peaceful life. Atiba Gorkin was arrested early in the state of emergency. Charged with being a member of the Nelson Street gang, he was released a month later due to a lack of evidence. For him, Port of Spain is divided by invisible battle lines.
if you're from Nelson, Chittanigo in down country, they have to there. Or if you're living from Nelson, Chittanigo in and the beat on me, have to there.
Why?
Because that's how it is. I don't want to know why, but that's how it is. So the best thing for you to do is stay where you're living. You will live. You might live a little longer. No, nobody don't know when it's dead.
Atiba told me it was a very violent neighbourhood where drug dealing was rife.
So Atiba, from up here you can see all around. Which are the areas that you don't go into? Would you go up the hill that way?
This whole area.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
But you're basically a prisoner in your own area.
That's how the life is. That if you want to safeguard your life here. Yeah.
Atiba hurried home. It was getting close to curfew time. Everyone on Nelson Street expected more police raids at any moment.
It's now 10:05 and the curfew starts at 11, but already you can start to feel the tension here building.
Driving down the Nelson, blue and white.
There are lookouts on the corner of every single block, and they've started shouting out whenever the police are coming past, and it's happening regularly. The police have just gone past again. They came past about 5 minutes ago. The streets are noticeably quieter, but the other thing I've noticed is that at the far end, where I can see a lot of the drug dealing takes place, more and more people are desperately arriving there, trying to buy their drugs before the curfew so they can get back home in time.
But the murder epidemic in Trinidad has more behind it than the activities of neighbourhood gangs. As people hurried home, I spotted Inspector Singh and his men who'd set up a roadblock on one of the main routes out of the city.
This is a road exercise where we check in the occupants of vehicles for illegal firearms and narcotics and persons we wanted in connections with reports of shootings and murders and so on.
With decades of experience, he had his own views on the real causes of the violence plaguing his district.
Why are there so many guns and drugs here in Trinidad?
Because of our close proximity to the South American countries, you find it through the ports, through the airport.
Through the ports and the airport?
Yeah.
Is that common?
Yes. Because in the past, recently, we have made many seizures at those locations.
Right.
The guns and drugs on Trinidad's streets are byproducts of a vast and secret industry.
Trinidad has become a major transshipment point for drugs coming out of the Southern American countries into North America and Europe. As a result, the Trinidadian Coast Guard have to patrol the waters around their country in an attempt to stop the drug smugglers. During the state of emergency, they also have a 3-mile exclusion zone, which gives them extra powers to stop and board vessels. We're about 20 minutes out of the Coast Guard's base. You can see Port of Spain City behind me there, but if you look over this side, you can see how the whole of the island is basically a mass of inlets and little coves. It's a smuggler's paradise around here.
The mountain range is seen and the mist in the back, that is Venezuela.
Oh, wow. Wow, I can never get over just how close you actually are.
Yeah.
The South American mainland is just 7 miles away from Trinidad.
Made contact with a small fishing vessel. It's called a pirogue, and these are exactly the kind of boats that are used to smuggle drugs into the coves and inlets in Trinidad. The interceptor boat's pulling up alongside, and they're going to search it now.
There was nothing on this boat, but the government estimate that hundreds of millions of pounds of drugs are smuggled into Trinidad each year. The majority are transshipped to Europe and America. What's left is sold on the domestic market. The smugglers often bring guns to protect their shipments, but once the drugs leave, the guns are sold on the streets. The Coast Guard spokesman, Lieutenant Jean-Baptiste, admitted that most of the drugs get past them.
It will be foolhardy of me to say that, yeah, we stop everything, right? That'll be wrong. That'll be an erroneous statement altogether. right? But I do believe that we're making an impact.
Recent seizures suggest that most of the drugs smuggled into Trinidad are shipped out again through official ports of entry. This is Port of Spain, but at another major port, Point Lisas, a funding row has left authorities without a scanner to screen containers. According to UN estimates, in 2004, smugglers paid nearly £80 million a year in bribes to Trinidadian officials. I've been repeatedly told that some people in authority were paid to protect major drug traffickers, but most people were too afraid to say so on camera.
The majority of the police force are very good officers and do their job, but there is a minority within the police that is corrupt. The problem with the police...
I went to a criminology class at the University of West Indies, where many of the students work in law enforcement. This woman, who asked not to be named, has been interviewing police officers for a study.
Police officers complain that they are not well paid. So it is my opinion, and I do work alongside police officers and law enforcement agencies, that if you are protecting someone in the high society, you will get money for it. So it's like a supplement to your income. So that is why a lot of police officers are corrupt, because they do protect the big fish.
I'd heard that opinion before, but I was shocked by what I was about to hear from one of her fellow students.
I am a policeman for the past 32 years. And with the appearance of drugs on the scene, that changed the play. And some prefer to turn a blind eye. And not all police were comfortable with turning a blind eye, I would say, when it comes down to that. Because if they spoke out, they were eliminated. Policemen were eliminated. Policemen were transferred. They were set up. All kinds of things started to happen from the top. So police were afraid to speak out. And they just continued just reporting for duty.
Despite the size of the drug transshipment industry that uses Trinidad, few major traffickers have ever been arrested. And the state of emergency does nothing to dismantle this industry, which fuels the murder epidemic with guns and drugs.
Arriving at the top of Nelson Street, we got a call about half an hour ago from a contact saying that the police had locked down the whole area. They were searching houses and arresting people. So we're going to find out what's going on. Straight up? Yeah. Thank you.
By the tree, by the tree. Okay.
From what I've managed to gather, this isn't the usual local police. It's an interagency task force which involves the army and a number of other agencies. They're going from building to building, and from what I've heard, they don't care if people are in their house or not. They're taking down every door and marching in wherever they see fit.
Excuse me, sir. I would prefer if you not tape at the moment, please. This is a confined area that the exercise is being conducted, okay? If you stay on the pavement on either side, but once you traverse through here, right, we cannot be held responsible if there's any untoward incident, and that's all we say. All right?
The police arrested 3 men and seized a substantial quantity of cocaine. But after 2 months and over 4,000 arrests, street-level criminals are still the main focus of the state of emergency.
Bombay. Good, man. How are you?
I went back up the hill to see Bombay in St. Barb's.
Let's walk.
He told me that until the government tackled the powerful figures behind the drug trade, nothing would change.
Where are all the drugs and guns coming from? The government would have you believe that it's the boys on the street themselves bringing it in.
The little black boy now is just the pawn, but the pawn is the one that always pay the price, because the big fish that hide himself, he have money, he mingling in the society. So let me say you're bringing in 10 containers of marijuana. That can't clear itself. It cannot clear itself. Somebody on the top of the pass down the order to leave them containers alone.
During this state of emergency, there's a lot of focus on the boys on the streets. Do you think it's going to stop the violence in the long run?
The boys on the streets could be replaced by other boys on the streets, so it's going to stop.
I've come to the office of Trinidad's Prime Minister to meet her National Security Advisor, Gary Griffith. He is one of the architects of the state of emergency and one of its most outspoken supporters. It's probably no surprise to you to hear that every person I speak to in Trinidad tells me, when I ask them where do the drugs and guns come from, they tell me that the ports, the customs authorities, the Coast Guard and the police are 100% involved in the trafficking of drugs and guns. Why are you not focusing on that?
Every single country in the world will have corrupt police officers, will have corrupt persons in the judiciary, will have corrupt politicians. That is not an avenue to call a state of emergency. We needed a state of emergency to stop law-abiding citizens in this country from being killed.
But a state of emergency is going to be completely ineffective in dealing with that top-level crime.
Correct.
But that top-level crime is fundamental, because once they're in place and once they stay in place, they can always feed down, and there will always be desperate people at the bottom willing to take their money.
And that, yeah, but it's not a state of emergency before, during, or after that is going to stop that. That has to do with the criminal justice system. How did you acquire the assets? So that is legislation.
So exactly, do you not think that these sorts of things should have been brought in before you go through a state of emergency?
That is legislation. In your country, it took years for that to be implemented. You can't wait years to implement legislation to stop innocent persons from being killed on the streets.
On the street outside Port of Spain Magistrates Court, I met up with Susan and Ingrid, the mothers I'd met earlier. Their sons were due in court.
Susan, what do you think is going to happen today?
We are hoping that they come out today.
Are you nervous?
I'm a little nervous, yes. I didn't eat this morning. I didn't want to drink anything because I'm nervous. I want to see my children back home again, so yes, I'm a little nervous.
In a separate hearing that morning, 7 other men accused of being in a gang were released due to lack of evidence. So Susan and Ingrid had good reason to be hopeful.
The court case didn't quite go as everyone had hoped. The magistrate decided to adjourn for another week. It must be really disappointing.
There's a very hard thing going on, because it's very hard. Coming to court and you think they may come out, and then it's like go back up the road like it's nothing to them, but it'll be helpful for the family.
How was it to see him for the first time?
All right, but we are still disappointed. Still disappointed.
10 days later, Susan and Ingrid's sons were released due to lack of evidence. The Trinidadian government introduced the state of emergency to make people's lives safer. But when it ends in a few weeks' time, nothing fundamental will have changed. Until the government tackles official corruption and the drug transshipment industry, drugs and guns will leak onto Trinidad's streets, and the murders will continue.
At the start of November, Trinidad stopped the curfew, but the state of emergency is still in force. Next week, Jenny Kleeman reports from the Mosquito Coast in Honduras, where indigenous people risk their lives diving for lobster 150 feet down for restaurant tables in Europe and North America. Goodbye.